Well, welcome, folks. We're back here to study some more of this Lilith theory. And I thought about doing a little more Hebrew, but I think I'm going to hold that off for a little while. I think I've got enough material online for people to learn from to kind of get a basic start on the language. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and work on this Lilith theory. You notice I've still got a little bit of a cold today. Using these Fisherman's Friend. I don't know if you can see him or not. I'm putting right in front of my face. Fisherman's Friend. Great cough drop. And if you guys have colds out there, pretty good. And so we're going to be looking into this theory a little more. Welcome, welcome. All people who want to join in this class. So we are on 3.14. A Nakash serpent implies a demonically inhabited human. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through this material. We're going to look up the scriptures. I'm using Bible Hub. That's my go-to because I can get Hebrew and I can get pretty much anything. Greek and Hebrew, I can get all the translations and so on. So let's try to get rid of that stream window though. There we go. All right, so before, if you remember, we were talking about how the last element of the last class, we were going into the serpent's craftiness. And that seems to imply more than just a dumb animal nature, that it seems to imply something that's higher than your typical animal, kind of nature. And this was another proof that was being offered for the existence of Lilith and at least whatever the theories are out there, whatever Judaism holds or all of their esoteric books, that's not to say that everything that they say of this creature is true, but there seems to be strong evidence for the existence of something that relates to the Lilith story. And so we're going to try to sift through and see what you guys think has legitimacy and what doesn't. Okay, so we're going to continue on here. There's further intriguing clue that the serpent was not only human, but that it was a demonically possessed woman. This hint stems from the definition, the etymology of the Hebrew word translated as serpent. This word indicates that the serpent may have shared the traits a demonically inhabited medium or soothsayer who use indwelling familiar spirits to gain power and or knowledge. The word translated as serpent is Nachash, and that is, you got the Nun Het Sheen there, Strong's 5175. According to the Genesius lexicon, Nachash comes from a root which means to whisper or to hiss. Look at that. Nachash can also mean to divine or to enchant. That's Strong's 5172, 5173. Gesenius, not Genesius, but Gesenius, I think is how you say that, Gesenius, relates that this later meaning stemmed from the word describing the whispers of the soothsayers. Like modern day mediums or channelers, biblical soothsayers gain their powers through an indwelling demonic spirit. They spoke the words of these spirits in their trances. Also, like modern mediums, these inhabited soothsayers were mostly women. Interesting. Now, when you think of witches, especially if you read the accounts of the Puritans and the Middle Ages accounts, 9 times out of 10, it was a woman who was accused of being a witch. That's not to say that sometimes a man would be accused, but that was a very rare occurrence. What I'm going to do here, for some reason, I don't have this streaming on Facebook. There we go. Okay, we got it streaming now. Let's share this to these groups. Okay. In case anybody else wants to tune in here. Okay, so we're talking about the word Nachash. It appears 31 times in the Bible with the meaning of serpent. 10 of those appearances are in reference to the serpent of Eden. It appears 11 times with the meaning of divination. Let's take a look at this here. Okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. Oh. That's not what I wanted, is it? Let's see if I can go back to the actual. Okay. Just one little touch will get you in trouble on this book. Here. Somewhere here. Need 3 point something. Yeah, I don't think we've gotten any of this yet. I know that we're in 3 something. I should be able to right click on that to get that for us, but I'm not going to mess with these right here. Each time Nakash is translated as serpent, it refers to a supernaturally inhabited creature of cursing. Nowhere in the Bible does Nachash clearly refer to an ordinary snake. Isn't that something? The first Nachash is used in the Bible outside of Genesis.
Good. You feeling him?
Outside of Genesis 3 as Genesis 44:5. Okay. Okay, let's try it. Let's take a look at this. 44:5. Is not this which drinks my master? Okay, so hello ze aser yishte and Adonai bo from, let's see, and he indeed practices divination. There it is, Nachash, and it means practices divination. Isn't that something? Yenahash. Look at that there. Interesting that this term Nachash is related to someone who practices divination. Hey, brother Emerson, if you have a comment or anything, just raise your hand so I know that it's not the mic slipping off. Okay, you're welcome to partake. Okay, so there it refers to divination. Nachash divination is mentioned 11 times in the Bible. Each time it is performed by humans. This implies that the serpent could be a demonically inhabited human. The ancient soothsayer corresponds to today's modern channeler, who claims to have an indwelling spirit that temporarily takes over her body, animates her with its life force, and thereby gives her knowledge or power. The indwelling demonic spirit of a soothsayer is called her familiar spirit. This familiar spirit is summoned by her so that it might inhabit her and thereby impart information or power to her. The soothsayer's indwelling familiar spirit was either the spirit of the dead returned to earth or the spirit of the soothsaying demon. Now, I'm not going to agree with that part, the spirit of the dead, because what the author is referencing is the witch of Endor and Samuel. Satan does not have power over there's another angel that's in charge at that time that if we understand biblical, in other words, what happens to the righteous, they go to Abraham's bosom. That's where they were until Messiah rose again. And so people who are righteous before Messiah rose again, this is in the old, in other words, the books, the timing of the books, Genesis to Malachi. Let's put it that way. I don't like to put Old Covenant, although it is, in a sense, an Old Covenant, that we have a renewed covenant. But what I'm saying here is that he's suggesting that the witch of Endor, and I think that's what his reference is here, was channeling Samuel to King Saul. And I don't believe that. I believe that it was a lying spirit. And these spirits have an uncanny way of mimicking and making it believable. And they have knowledge that you wouldn't think they have. Well, that's because spirits are constantly communicating with each other in the unseen world. They're constantly, and they don't have the frailties of flesh. It's almost like a video player that's recording everything, okay? So think about that. So let me write this again, read this again. The soothsayer's indwelling familiar spirit was either the spirit of the dead, returned to earth, or the spirit of a soothsaying demon. Some believe that when the soothsayer professed to be indwelt with the spirit of the dead, they were in fact possessed by a demon, falsely claiming to be that spirit. Okay, so it looks like he does understand this. It's falsely claiming to be that spirit. Okay. In conclusion, the Hebrew word for serpent provides evidence that it was no snake, but rather a demonically inhabited human. Furthermore, this human was an agent of cursing and very likely a female. The demonic inhabitation of the serpent Lilith probably reflects the transformation which overcame her at her final rebellion when she shouted the name of Elohim, sprouted angelic-type wings, and fled. Part of her transformation apparently included the demonic habitation. Perhaps Lucifer came home to dwell with his daughter. Okay, so basically the argument that's being made here is that the term Nachash, that it doesn't strictly refer to the physical snake, but in most places, in many places of the scriptures, referring to someone who's inhabited by a demonic spirit. And that demonic spirit is referred to as Nachash. Okay, 3:15, the fleeing serpent Leviathan as Lilith. In identifying Lilith as a serpent of the garden, we can thereby link her to biblical passages concerning the serpent Leviathan. Leviathan is widely acknowledged to be another guise or title for the serpent of the garden. Now, you may have wondered about this term Leviathan in the Bible. It's made in a couple places. From Leviathan, many aspects of Lilith legend can be confirmed. In the Bible, Leviathan is described as a serpent fleeing from Elohim. Look at that. It dwells in the seas, and Yahweh shall crush its head in the great day of judgment. These facts confirm key aspects of the Lilith legend, namely that she had wings, that she fled as a fugitive from the garden, that she came to inhabit the seas, and then in the day of judgment, the promised seed of Eve would crush her head. Note that the title Leviathan may be based on a real sea creature, perhaps a whale or other large animal, just as the title of the serpent may have been based loosely on a snake. However, the mystical Leviathan was no mere animal. He is the king of all sons of pride. Look at that, Job 41:34. So let's take a look at that. Okay, let's say, hi, he beholds, he is Melech, all over, call all, Benai, the sons, Hahash. Let's take a look at that in the, okay, let's see, where's that at? Where it talks about, there we go. Can you draw out Leviathan with hook or his tongue with a cord which you let down? And notice that it's using the masculine singular here. which interesting, because in Genesis, it refers to, it refers to Lilith as Adamah, and Adam as Adam, but they're two of the same unit. They're on the same level of creation, allegedly, according to the theory. And so this entire chapter is about Leviathan, and that it's a great creature. It's very fierce. None is so fierce that dare stir him up. And it appears almost like it talks about scales are his pride. I wonder if it could be something similar to a dragon, maybe. Something like that. Look at this. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke. There's another indication. This could be dragon-like creature. His breath kindles coals, and his flame goes out of his mouth. That's dragon. Now, lest anyone suggest that that's just mythology, I would like to point you to the natural world, and you can look this up yourself. Look up the bombardier beetle. It's called the bombardier beetle. It basically can shoot a chemical fire out its rear end at its predators, any predators. It shoots a liquid fire. And basically this is, go ahead, Brother Emerson.
I was going to mention that beetle, it has two different chemicals in its rear end that it keeps separate. And then when it mixes them, when it creates that heat, that spark. And what's interesting is they've found, dinosaur skeletons, and there's some of them that have like empty crevices in the skull, and they just assume, they make assumptions, but it very well could be something similar where there was two different chemicals kept in there, and when they excrete them from their mouth, they mixed and created flames or sparks of some sort. It's really fascinating. And then another really interesting thing is there's all sorts of historical pottery and cave drawings and things with dinosaurs living at the same time as mankind, and some of them showing as having fire coming out of their mouth. So it's a really fascinating topic you're covering. I'm enjoying this. Thank you.
Yeah, very good comments there. You're right. It's a marvel of nature, really, the bombardier beetle. And so it is possible there are already creatures still in the earth today that exhibit that characteristic. So let's take a look here, back here, where it talks about, let's see here, where we were looking at, get this back. Okay. Okay, we were talking about Leviathan and how it mirrors the aspects of Lilith. Okay, and then we looked at Job 41:34. Leviathan is mentioned in the Bible 7 times. Look at that: Job 3:8, 26:13, 41:1, Psalm 74:14, 104:26, Amos 9:3, and Isaiah 27:1. Two of the more informative references are Job 26:13 and Isaiah 27:1. Let's take a look at those real quick here. Job 3:8. Job 3:8. Okay, and I want to look at that in the Hebrew. Okay, may those curse it who curse the day, those who are ready to rouse Leviathan. Look at that. It's almost like Leviathan can be roused. Could that be similar to satanic forces, satanic people who are imbibing, who are, they're in their ceremonies, they call up the spirit? Look at that. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, now let's take a look at this other one here. Job 26:13. Okay, so by his spirit the heavens he adorned, pierced his hand, the serpent, Nachash fleeing. By his spirit the heavens he adorned, pierced his hand, the serpent fleeing. Look at that, pierced his hand. That almost looks messianic in nature. Let's take a look at the, this is 13. Let's take a look at that in the departed spirits are made to tremble under the waters in their habitation. Sheol is naked before him. So this is speaking of Elohim. And Abaddon has no covering. Look at that. Abaddon. He stretches out the north over empty spaces. He hangs the earth on nothing. He wraps up the water in his clouds, and the cloud does not burst under them. He obscures the face of the full moon and spreads his cloud over it. He has inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. The pillar of heaven tremble and are amazed at his rebuke. With his power, he quieted the sea, and by his understanding, he shattered Rahab. By his breath, the heavens are cleared. His hand has pierced the fleeing serpent. Look at that. So that could be in reference to Lilith. Has pierced his hand, his breath of heaven have cleared, his hand has pierced the fleeing serpent. Okay, wow. It's interesting when you study something like this, and these obscure scriptures, they kind of, I don't know, they kind of take on meaning, I guess, new meaning of sorts. Okay, let's take a look at this one, Job 41:1. Okay. Let's take a look at that in the Hebrew. Okay, can you draw out Timsok, Leviathan? Look at that, Leviathan. It looks like, it almost looks like Leviathan, because it's got a vet there with a what is it? Shiva. There's a Shiva under the vet. Leviathan. Actually is how you pronounce that in Hebrew. With a hook or with a line which you lower, snare his tongue. Look at that. That's almost snake-like and or dragon-like in description, isn't it? Okay. Okay, Psalm 74:14. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so you, ata, broken pieces, ritsata, the heads, Roche, Leviathan, you broken pieces of the heads of Leviathan. Now that could, right there, that could refer to what the book of Jubilees refers to, where after the flood, these spirits were cast into hell. And I think it's Jubilees, where a mastema, which is another code word for the devil, yeah, that's a good point there, Steve. Seems that we're male and female of them also. Interesting. So basically, mastema says, hey, you can't take all these and these offspring. When it says the heads, it could refer to the offspring, these powerful spirits who were provoking mankind to violate Yahweh's decrees and to do all of these things that the book of Enoch seems to list as causing the destruction of the world, namely that being teaching about warfare, teaching about, divination, teaching about communing with these spirits. There's a whole list of things, using the things of the earth to get yourself into a state to where spirits can imbibe, can inhabit you or commune with you. These are demonic spirits that it's talking about. I wonder if that has reference to that there. Interesting thought. Okay, and then let's see here. We've got a Psalm 104:26. Take a look at that one. Oh, we spelled Psalms wrong. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, there, the ships, Sham, the ships sail out. There is that Leviathan. Okay, so that does indicate, seems to indicate that Leviathan is in the sea somewhere. Look at that. Zeh, which you have made. Getsarta. Okay, let's see, to play there, which you have made to play there. So it implies that Leviathan dwells in the sea. Now, I wonder if there's any connection between the mermaid mythology and the offspring of Leviathan. Is there any connection there? I don't know. You think about Greek mythology, the sirens, who were these demonic, these women. But they're really demonic creatures. They were inhabiting these crags of rocks, and they would project their voices in the most beautiful song, and the sailors would be mesmerized by them, and they would guide their ships to try to see who was making such a beautiful song. They would guide their ships, and these sirens would draw them in, and their ships would go a wreck. And then maybe part of the mythos is that they would feast upon the flesh of those sailors, that kind of thing. Okay, Amos 9:3. Let's take a look at that. Okay, and though they hide themselves on top of Carmel. Now, wait a minute here. Is Mount Carmel where those angels came down? Those 200 angels in the book of Enoch? Let me look that up. Anybody know?
It's Hermon.
Oh, it's Hermon. Okay.
Mount Hermon.
All right. I wanted to see if there was a connection there, but you're right. You're right. Mount Hermon. And this says Mount Carmel. And though they hide themselves on top of Carmel, from there I will search and take them. And though they hide from my sight at the bottom of the sea, from there I will command the serpent. There it is. Ha-nachash. Look at that. Ha-nachash. Thank you, Brother Emerson. That's Enoch chapter 6, verse 6, folks. For those of you out there that are listening, that's where that's at. It's Mount Hermon, not Carmel. So what this is referring to is people who are trying to escape the judgment of Elohim. And so Mount Carmel is referring to those who might flee to Mount Carmel, and then those who would go to the bottom of the sea. This could have, oh, okay, thank you, Steve. That's where Isaiah confronted Baal priests. Look at that. That's right, Mount Carmel. Elijah the prophet confronted the priests of Baal there on Mount Carmel. And though they hide from my sight at the bottom of the sea. Now, how do you think they could hide at the bottom of the sea? You know what I suggest? I suggest that Scripture, in its spiritual state and understanding, has no real, it's not rooted in the linear time element. Is it possible to go to the bottom of the sea today? Yes, it is, in submarines. Yes, it is. Would the rich and powerful have submarines to try to escape the wrath of Elohim in the last day and perhaps go to the bottom of the sea to wait it out? Yes, it is. Imagine that scene. If the rich and powerful in the latter day were to try to escape the judgment of Elohim upon the earth, and he calls out Leviathan, the serpent, Ha-nachash, and it shall bite them. Imagine that scene. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay, and then Isaiah 27:1. Let's take a look at that. Okay, in the day that will punish Yahweh with his sword. Okay, so this is talking about the punishment of Yahweh, severe and great and mighty on Leviathan. There it is, Leviathan. The serpent, Nachash. There it is. Fleen. So it looks like there's going to be a day of judgment when Almighty Yah sends out his archangel to punish Leviathan. And Fleen and Leviathan, the serpent, that twisted. Look at that twisted. Interesting. That's an interesting character about Leviathan, that she twists. And he will slay, this is Yahweh, he will slay the reptile. Hatanin looks like the reptile that is in the sea. Wow. Okay, so it very well be, you know what? This kind of reminds me of Revelation. You know, where you see this dragon in Revelation? I don't know. Is that so? Typically that's referred to as the devil himself, but just a thought. Now this one's in the sea, so. Okay, so those are the scripture references here. Yeah, the great red dragon. Two of the more important of the references are Job 26:13 and Isaiah 27:1. These passages describe Leviathan as a fleeing serpent. My literal translations are given below, along with the word-by-word breakdown as in table 312 and table 313. The word for fleeing in Job 26:13 is bariach, Strong's 1281. In Isaiah 27:1, the word is barach. Strong's 1272, the root of the prior bariach. Both variants mean to break off and to flee or to escape, as in being a fugitive. Thus, Leviathan is described as fleeing and being a fugitive from some situation. Traditionally, Leviathan has been seen as having wings. This matches a key element of Lilith's legend, that she sprouted wings and fled from the garden. It's almost like if you see these science fiction shows, or you see some of these other shows where, like, I've seen scenes where, like, they transform and they have wings now. And usually it's a really ugly creature if it's like a horror show or something. I probably shouldn't watch those. It does give you an idea, it does give you imagery of what happened here with Lilith, you know. She sprouted wings and fled from the garden. All right, so let's take a look at the Hebrew here. Okay, so let's see. We've got by his spirit, Shemayim. Okay, he has garnished, Alay forms through twisting. Look at that, Alay. This looks like a hat here, Chanle. Yadu, it looks like this is Yado right here, I think. That's a whole M, his hand, Nachash. And then Ariyach. This could be Ach, it could be Ach there, because that hat at the end. Ariyach, fleeing. Okay, table 312, a transliteration of Job 26:13 from Isaiah 27. We also learn in the day of judgment, Yahweh shall slay Leviathan. This matches Lilith legends that Eve's promised seed would crush the serpent's head. Okay, let's take a look at that. In that day, Yahweh shall appoint with his sword the stiff-necked and the great and the strong upon Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, and upon Leviathan, the twisted serpent. Look at that, twisted serpent. And he shall slay the dragon, which is in the sea. Now, let me suggest this. Let me suggest this here. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Emerson. Let me look at that. If Lilith sprouted wings to flee the garden, but the serpent was cursed to crawl on its belly, seems like opposites. Yeah, you're right. It does seem that way. And I wonder if, I suppose then from this theory and viewpoint, if they were to suggest that being of the dust means that she is communing with those who are below. When it speaks of the dust, those who are below, it kind of uses like Messiah's kind of speaking, where he says, you are from below, I am from above. You are from below, I am from above. Could the dust mean that she is relegated to the demonic realm, and that she no longer has her place or even a chance to be in the above realm? I don't know, something to think about there. Okay, so let's take a look here in day that he shall appoint Yahweh with his sword, the stiff-necked and the great and strong, upon Leviathan, serpent fleeing, and upon Leviathan, serpent twisted, he shall slay. Look at that, it literally comes out and says the dragon, which is in sea. Okay, and I think that Isaiah literally, or King James Version literally uses that term, the dragon. From the Isaiah passage, we learn other fascinating facts concerning Leviathan. In the great day of judgment, certain wicked people are slain by Yahweh and appointed or reckoned upon Leviathan. These people are the stiff-necked and prideful, the great and powerful and the strong. Is it possible that Leviathan is empowering the New World Order? That this is the spirit that is enabling the New World Order, that they are swearing fealty to the dark side? Something to think about that. They are the powerful and the strong, aren't they, in the earth? As we shall see in later sections, this is consistent with Lilith's role in the judgment of the end days. More remarkably, Isaiah implies there are two Leviathans. There is the fleeing Leviathan, and there is the twisted or torturous Leviathan. Okay, so Kabbalistic writings have explained that these represent two aspects of Lilith, one being male, the fleeing serpent, and the other female, the twisted serpent. You know how I would interpret that, just off the top of my head? When Lilith, now this is kind of gets into some esoteric kind of stuff, but remember the story, and this is kind of a Kabbalistic esoteric. I think there might be some writings where I picked this up, but essentially, and this is essentially that Adam wanted to be the one on top when they had sexual relations. He wanted to be the one on top, and she didn't like that. She didn't like that because that seemed to imply that he was over her. And she said, no, I'm going to be the one on top. I'm going to be the one on top during sexual relations. And that upset Adam. He said, no, that's not the way it should be. And that started their wrangling back and forth. And pretty soon, she decided to break away. And she did not want to submit to the order of Elohim. And I know that probably would upset the feminists out there, but anyway, so I thought about that. Is it possible that could have the aspect here that it's talking about? Where it says the twisted serpent. You see that? It's twisting. If you look at feminist ideology, it twists the plan of Elohim. It twists it in such a way, and the story that they tell is a twisted version of the events of the garden. It's a twisted version even in the New Testament. And so when it talks about the twisted serpent, could it have to do with twisted in that it's twisting the truth, that it's not even reporting it as what it is intended to be when you're speaking about it. Okay, that has interesting thought there. Okay, so in Isaiah 27:1, the dragon refers to the body, and Leviathan refers to the spirit. In the mystical writings of the brothers Jacob and Isaac HaKohen of Castile, which predates the Zohar by a few decades, Lilith was created like Adam as an androgynous being. Just as Eve was attached to Adam's side, so too was Samael attached to Lilith's side. So Samael would be that fallen angel, that spirit that Lilith ran to after she left Adam. And so she attached to a demonic spirit when she left Adam. And as we shall see in later sections, the Zohar also speaks of two Liliths. There is evil Lilith and sinful Lilith. There is heavily mystical, these are heavily mystical topics that will be covered later. For now, let us continue to investigate the clear evidences linking Lilith to Leviathan. In its discussion of Leviathan, Psalm 74:14 confirms more elements of Lilith's legends. It states Leviathan dwells in the seas, and that's in Psalms 104:26. I think we read that, Psalms 104:26. This confirms the Lilith legend that she came to dwell in the sea. Now, if this would be an interesting study, to study the mythology of creatures that inhabit the sea. You know, something I thought about? What about this new movie that came out with Jason Momoa? He stars in it, and it's about these undersea kingdoms and how they're in conflict with the land kingdoms. You know who I'm talking about? It's that movie. It's the mermaid kind of idea, and I can't remember. It's a famous movie. It's out now. Aquaman. There we go. Aquaman. Thank you, Brother Emerson. Yeah, Aquaman. Now think about the parallels, some of this here. Now, what about that creature? Remember in that movie, the creature that they had to get by, that Jason Momoa, who was playing Aquaman, had to get by to get that trident? Remember that? That really powerful creature that was at the bottom? I mean, this kind of stuff is evident. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie yet, but there's a very powerful creature at the bottom of the sea that Aquaman has to get by to get that special trident so that he can take authority over the creatures of the sea and therefore stop the war that's happening and the plans for these undersea kingdoms to destroy the land kingdoms, essentially, with massive loss of life. So that was sort of the crux of the story. And then once he had that trident, he even commanded that very powerful creature at the bottom of the sea to come up and help fight the battles, to stop this tyranny from happening. Now, if you watch that movie, you can see there's some parallels here. And so it's almost like these powerful people at the top, they know these things and they are slowly rolling these things out to public through the media, through Hollywood. Very interesting to think about. Okay, so Lilith was created like Adam as an androgynous being, just as Eve was attached to Adam's side, so too was Samael attached to Lilith's side. As we shall see in later sections, the Zohar also speaks of two Liliths. There's evil Lilith, sinful Lilith. Okay, so they are heavily mystical topics. We covered that. In its discussion of Leviathan, Psalm 74:14 confirms more elements of Lilith legend. It states that Leviathan dwells in the seas. This confirms the Lilith legend that she came to dwell in the sea. Psalm 74 also speaks of Yahweh crushing the head of Leviathan, the heads of Leviathan. Notice that it's plural. It's Roshim, plural. It's a word pair in the Hebrew. I think it says Rosheh, but that's just means Roshim. This confirms Leviathan's identity as a serpent. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think you were right, brother. Schnobelen said the same. Those behind Hollywood are knowledgeable, especially of the knowledge of evil. Yeah. As it again matches Yahweh's curse on the serpent in Genesis, that Eve's promised seed would crush the head of the serpent. The plural heads in Psalms 14 is a probable reference to the multiple dragons in verse 13, the bodies, and the two Leviathan spirits in Isaiah 27:1. You divide the sea by your strength, you break the heads of the dragons in the water. So there's more than one. There's more than one. Look at the parallels to the Aquaman movie here. The parallels. You break the heads of Leviathan in pieces and gave him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Look at that. Could that be a reference to either the Exodus or before or the final Exodus? I don't know. Wow. You did cleave the fountain and the flood. You dried up mighty rivers. Now look at that. You dried up mighty rivers. That is a prophetic aspect, drying up the mighty rivers. Okay, so let me show you this here. I just want to follow this out here. Okay, it talks about striking the Egyptian sea. That might be right here. Okay, okay, so this is in Isaiah 11:15, and will utterly destroy, Yahweh will utterly destroy the tongue of the sea of Egypt. And he will shake his fist over the river, that's the Nile, with mighty, his wind with mighty, and strike it in 7 streams and make men cross over dry shod. Look at that. And make men cross over dry shod. And look at the connection here. You did cleave the fountain in the flood, which dried up mighty rivers. To cleave means to separate, to open. Could this be a reference to the power of Leviathan being broken and Yahweh frees his people? Yahweh frees his people as a result of the power of Leviathan being broken? Could this be a reference to the Exodus before and yet into the future? Something to think about. Okay, let's go on here. You broke the sea in your strength. You broke the pieces of the heads of the dragon in the waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan and delivered them to be food for people for dry places. You broke open the fountains of the flood. You had dried up mighty rivers. Okay, so here it is. You, Watsat, Roche. So this is a word pair here. Roche Leviathan. Or it's Leviathan in Hebrew. So it's really a word for Roshim, heads of, so it's plural. And deliver it, and gain food, and me'achol, for the people, okay, to dry places. Let's see. Okay, so table 314 in transliteration of Psalm 74:14. There's another clue in Psalm 74 that Leviathan is Lilith, involves the drying up the seas when Leviathan is slain. The drying up is consistent with Lilith's judgment in Isaiah 34. Isaiah 34 has the only passage in the Bible that directly mentions Lilith by name. There it is related that she dwells in the seas, and that in the day of final judgment, the waters of her abode shall dry up. Section 321 will discuss in detail the appearance of Lilith in Isaiah 34. For now, it is sufficient to say that Leviathan's judgment in a dried sea matches that of Lilith in Isaiah. The drying up the seas in Psalms 74, 13 through 15 during Leviathan's judgment can be seen in all three verses. Verse 13 relates that in breaking the heads of the dragons, Yahweh will dry up the seas in which Leviathan lives. Okay, the Hebrew word used is parar, and it means to break, make void, or cause to cease. It is very often used in the sense of breaking an oath. In verse 13, it implies that Yahweh caused the sea to cease or evaporate. This notion is confirmed in verses 14 and 15. Now, think about this. You know, have you ever read Revelation? Revelation talks about the sun getting hotter and how the people they are thirsty. Talks about they're thirsty, and also I think there's other like prophetic book that talks about the sun waxes 7 times hotter. It dries up. It dries up things. It's almost like this. It's almost like that drying up. It's almost like drought is a judgment of Elohim for wickedness. It's a judgment of Elohim for wickedness. Think about that. And the reverse is true of that when you have Garden of Eden-like conditions and you have everything working right, the rain comes in its season, the crops come up in its season. That is even in the amongst the pagans and their philosophies. They recognize that much, at least, that's showing that Almighty above is everything's in order. Everything's in order in the earth. Okay, verse 15 recalls that it is in Yahweh's power to unleash floods and dry up mighty rivers. Verse 14 tells us that Leviathan will be served up as food for people to dry places. It is not that Leviathan's body will be transported to deserts, but that the place of his abode and slain will become dry. This feeding of Leviathan to the people is considered a critical element of the great banquet, celebrating the triumph of Messiah at the end of the age. According to Rabbinic Agadah, not only will Leviathan's body be for food, but also its skin will be used to make tents for the people. I don't know about that. It could have more of a symbolic element. Note that a literal translation of verse 26 in table 315 below states that Yahweh had called Leviathan to be a derision in the sea. The word means derision as sachak. Although the King James Version and others translate it as play, it more literally means to deride, to mock, or to laugh in a derisive way. Interesting. So this is Leviathan mocking, laughing derisively at perhaps the saints of Elohim, at Yahweh. You know, have you ever seen scenes where in movies? Yeah, thank you, Steve. Revelation 16:8, and the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. Yeah, and that's also paralleled with another prophetic verse that seems to say that the sun will wax 7 times hotter. And it even talks about how men will curse Yahweh because of the conditions of the earth. They will curse Yahweh. They will not repent. And now this is an interesting aspect here. Below, that Yahweh had created Leviathan to be a derision of the sea. The word means derision is cock, deride, to mock or laugh in a derisive way. Therefore, the passage relates that God created Leviathan in order that it would become disparaged in the midst of the sea. This is precisely Lilith's fate. In her punishment, she was confined to the depths of the sea. Interesting. Okay, this is Psalms 104, 24 to 26. O Master, how manifold are thy works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. So is this great and wide sea, wherein all things creep innumerable, both small and great beasts. There go the ships. There is that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein. So it could be this word to play is what they're talking about here. To mock, to laugh in a derisive way. I kind of wonder, let's see here. Let's read this here. This is Steve put this out. Moreover, and this is in Revelation 16. Moreover, the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be 7 times brighter. Oh, wait a minute. This might be in Isaiah. Sorry about that. This is Isaiah chapter 30, verse 26. Moreover, the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be 7 times brighter, like the light of 7 days in the day that Yahweh binds up the fracture of his people. Look at that. In the day that Yahweh binds up the fracture of his people and heals the wound they were struck. What was the wound they were struck with? Well, number one, the 2 houses were broke apart. That was a wound. What was the second wound? The northern kingdom, the house of Israel, was carried away by Assyria. That was another wound. And then finally, the wounds that Messiah suffered for the people in the house of his friends, as it says in Isaiah. Think about that. All right. So we're going back to Lilith now. Thank you for that, Steve, for finding those scriptures. Therefore, the passage relates that Yahweh created Leviathan in order that it would become disparaged in the midst of the sea. This is precisely Lilith's fate, and her punishment, she was confined to the depths of the sea. So here it is in Hebrew. Sham, Niyot, and travel, Levitan, Zeth, this. Okay, you had formed for a derision, the Shachak, in it. Oh, in it. Okay. And in it is in reference to, okay, all right, so let's take a look at this next table here. Double check this. Okay, so Amos 9:3 also provides evidence identifying the garden serpent as Leviathan. Look at that. So we're talking, and we're going back now to the garden. And the garden, in other words, the serpent that beguiled Eve. In Amos, Yahweh declares that he will hunt down transgressors wherever they may flee. If they go to the bottom of the sea, then he will command Ha-Nachash, that's the serpent, that's Leviathan, there to bite them. Amos 9:3 is generally acknowledged as a reference to Leviathan. However, Leviathan here is called only Ha-Nachash. Ha would be the. Ha in Hebrew is the. And then Nachash would be like in English translated as serpent or evil spirit, which is the precise title of the serpent in the garden. Thus, Amos 9:3 confirms that the serpent of the garden is Leviathan and that the serpent dwells in the bottom of the sea. This all matched the Lilith legend. Now, think about that Hollywood thing I was talking about, that huge creature. It was at the very bottom of the sea. It was in the trench. Remember that? It was in the trench at the very bottom. And remember, the trench was a fearsome place to go because of the creatures that were in there, and how Aquaman and that girl that he was with, they tried to get through all those creatures to get way down at the bottom, and they did find this little oasis that kept them safe from those creatures. And then the next scene is he's trying to fight this, and he's got this huge creature that doesn't want him to take the trident that's going to give him power. Wow, think about that. Okay. Okay, so Amos 9:3 confirms the serpent of the garden is Leviathan. The serpent dwells at the bottom of the sea. This all matches the Lilith legend. Amos 9:3, and though they hide themselves in the top of Carmel, I will search and take them out thence. And though they be hid from my sight in the bottom of the sea, thence will I command the serpent, and he shall bite them. There's one final bit of non-biblical information confirming Leviathan is Lilith. Leviathan also appears in the apocryphal book of Enoch. In that book, let's highlight that. I want to see that. In that book, Leviathan is specified as being female. Yeah, thank you for that. Link to the scene from Aquaman where he gets the trident and the sea monster. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in. I'm going to throw that into, let me see here. Actually, could you email that? Because I want to put that in the YouTube thing. I'm going to put my email in there. If you could just copy and paste that, send that to shul@hmisrael.com. Okay, so we're going back now to confirming that Leviathan is Lilith. Leviathan also appears in the apocryphal book of Enoch. In that book, Leviathan is specified as being female. She is also associated with the abyss of the ocean. Look at that. And the fountain of waters there. Do you know that even science says that at the very deepest part of the oceans, they think that water is coming up from the bottom of the ocean. It's coming up. Think about that. Well, how do you think the flood happened? Literally, it says that the fountains of the deep were broken and that they just came whooshing up while the rain came down, and that it had never rained on the earth. Think about that. She is also associated with the abyss of the ocean and the fountain of waters there. As we saw earlier, these fountains of waters are the same source of Noah's flood and the mist which arose to water the ground when Lilith was formed. Lilith's home is said to be the sea. Okay, so this is in Enoch. First Enoch chapter 60, verse 7 through 8. And that day will two monsters be parted, one monster, a female named Leviathan, in order to dwell in the abyss of the ocean over the fountains of the water, and the other, a male called Behemoth, which holds his chest in an invisible desert, whose name is Dundaim, east of the Garden of Eden. Now, I wonder if this Behemoth is Samael. Do you think that's Samael that she joined with? Which Samael, isn't that fallen angel that came down on Mount Hermon, one of the 200? I think that's right. Okay. And the other, a male called Behemoth, which holds his chest in an invisible desert, whose name is Dudayan, east of the... Now, think about this, guys. Think about how ignorant these so-called people who aren't even believers, who don't even understand anything of what's in the Bible, and they like to laugh and scorn about things they don't know anything about. They say, look at that. The Bible talks about dragons. The Bible talks about these huge creatures. We know that's all mythology. We know that's all, they don't even understand the essence of what's being talked about. So it's very difficult to try to minister truth to these kind of people out there, and they're doubters and skeptics. Really a waste of time a lot of times. But I'm going to look at my time here. I feel like I've gone an hour on this teaching. Yeah, I'm right at an hour. Okay, guys. Any last comments? We're gonna stop here where it says Leviathan. Next time we're gonna talk about how Leviathan created as a golem like Adam. Interesting. Created as a golem like Adam. So we're gonna get into some pretty esoteric stuff. I'm really enjoying this study because there's so many different roads that you can go down and connect things in Scripture. So for those of you out there, I want to remind you, this is the Lilith theory, emphasis on theory, okay? And we're just trying to put some things together that try to make sense of some scriptures that are very difficult to make sense of. And so I want to thank all of you for joining with us on this study. And what I'm going to do here is put in text. This is a production of Hebrew Messianic Israel. Okay, you can reach us at www.hmisrael.com. Okay, and we also have Shabbat service. Shabbat services, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, how do you get to those Sabbath services? www.theyahad.com. That gets you into a Zoom room. Make sure you have Zoom downloaded. Make sure you understand how to work Zoom. You can turn your mic off. You can turn your video off. You can put a different name in there. You can protect your anonymity. Okay. That's important, I think, for everyone to know. Also, if you enjoy these studies and you would like to make a donation, any donations that come into Hebrew Messianic, I just put on the material. I don't make a dime. I don't keep any of that money. It goes right to paying off domains. It pays off links, forwarding, and all different kinds of stuff. And I thank you for those who have donated. And to donate, it's very easy. Use CashApp and use the cash tag. And here it is. Miqramessianic. There it is. Use that cash tag, cashApp, Miqramessianic, if you've got cashApp. And I use that now because PayPal has gone full-on authoritarian, and they're even now threatening to steal $2,000 from people as a penalty. They just reach right into your bank account and take that $2,000 out. They can do that. Somehow, you know, the liberals who are in power of the entire administration, whoever you might run to complain about it, guess what? They have no power over that. That's in their terms of PayPal. That's in their terms of agreement. They can reach right down. If they see a video that you've done and they don't like something in it, guess what? They can say, okay, we're going to penalize you. Now, some of us don't even have 2,000 to steal. That's me. But anyway, did have a hard time. Anyway, for those who do have that money, they reach right down there and grab it. Okay, guys? So watch out for that PayPal. They're a bunch of rascals. They really are. All right. Well, I enjoyed this with you guys, and I hope that you have a great, I hope that you guys stay well, and we'll try to get back together with this next time. Yah be praised.